He was the chef everyone blamed for the fire that killed his wife and destroyed his life. 3 years later, while working in silence as a forgotten kitchen hand, he uncovered his late wife's hidden recipe and the truth that could burn his world all over again. But when the CEO tasted his dish, she froze. The room went silent, and what happened next made everyone question who really started the fire. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The summer heat pressed heavy over Los Angeles, turning the glass walls of the Solara Dining Group's test kitchen into a furnace. The air shimmered above the stoves, thick with the scent of garlic, seared butter, and tension. Stainless steel counters reflected the burnished glow of the afternoon sun, and every clang of a pan felt like the tolling of a clock, counting down to someone's end. Noah Larkin stood by the prep station, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms streaked with faint burn scars that caught the light like old memories. At 34, his face carried the quiet weight of someone who'd seen too much too soon. Dark hair tousled from hours of heat, a jawline shadowed by exhaustion, and eyes that used to dream now dulled by routine. He wasn't always this quiet. Once, his laugh had been the loudest thing in a kitchen. Before the fire, before the screams, before the smoke had swallowed everything he loved. Now, he was just another name on the payroll, a man people avoided talking to for too long. They called him the ghost chef, half in jest, half in warning. Noah didn't mind. Ghosts, after all, couldn't be fired twice. The kitchen door swung open, and in stepped Patrick Voss, the head chef. Broad-shouldered, his once proud frame now soft around the edges, with a thick beard streaked in gray and eyes like dull steel. Patrick had a voice that scraped like gravel and a temper that never cooled. He was the kind of man who believed loyalty could be bought with fear. 3 years ago, when the explosion in the old downtown restaurant destroyed both the kitchen and Noah's reputation, Patrick had been the first to point fingers. Negligence, he'd said, and everyone had believed him. Patrick leaned against the counter, crossing his tattooed arms. "I hear the new CEO's got a thing for redemption stories," he said with a smirk. "Maybe you'll finally get your big comeback, huh?" Noah didn't look up. "I'm just here to work." Patrick chuckled, a sound as cold as the steel shelves behind him. "Sure you are. But remember, Larkin, some fires don't burn out." He pushed off the counter and walked away, leaving a faint trail of expensive cologne and something more bitter, envy. When Patrick's footsteps faded, Noah let out a slow breath. He could still smell the faint ghost of smoke that seemed to follow him wherever he went. He hated that smell. It reminded him of Marin, his late wife, her laughter echoing through their old kitchen, her hands guiding his as they perfected their tomato sauce, her curls catching the summer light like wildfire. The fire had taken her too, or so people whispered. Noah never corrected them. The truth was more complicated, tangled in shame and silence. A voice broke his thoughts. "Chef Larkin?" Noah turned. Standing in the doorway was Caleb Reed, the company's young creative director. Barely in his 30s, Caleb had the look of a man who saw the world through a camera lens. Tousled brown hair, a sharp jawline, sleeves rolled neatly to mid-forearm, revealing inked designs of herbs and knives. He had the air of someone who smiled easily but noticed everything. "The CEO's arriving in 15. Caleb said, adjusting the strap of his camera bag. She's doing a company-wide review of the kitchen staff. Noah nodded. Elena Drake, I've heard. Then you know she's thorough. Caleb grinned faintly. Good luck, man. When Caleb left, Noah rinsed his hands and looked at his reflection in the stainless steel, blurred, fractured, imperfect. 3 years. 3 years of silence, of cheap apartments, of jobs that paid enough to keep Ruby in school, but not enough to buy back his name. He'd promised Marin, before the fire, that he'd never let their daughter see him broken. But every morning he woke up, the mirror told a different story. The door opened again. This time, the room went quiet. Elena Drake stepped inside, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. She was younger than Noah had expected, maybe 30, but carried herself with the poise of someone twice her age. Her chestnut brown hair was tied low, her suit crisp white with a linen sheen that caught the golden light. There was something distant about her, as if she was always half somewhere else. Her gray eyes swept the kitchen like a blade, seeing everything. Every mess, every flaw, every heartbeat that tried to hide behind professionalism. Good afternoon, she said, her tone measured yet warm. I'm Elena Drake. Starting today, I'm not just your CEO, I'm your first critic. The team chuckled nervously. Patrick stepped forward, all smiles. Ms. Drake, we're honored. The staff's been eager to show their dedication. Elena's gaze flicked to Noah, who stood at the far end of the kitchen. And you are? Noah Larkin, he said simply. For a heartbeat, her eyes lingered on his scarred forearm, on the way he stood a little apart from everyone else. How long have you been with Solara? 8 months. And before that? Noah hesitated. Before that, I cooked. Something flickered in her expression. A faint recognition, maybe curiosity, but she said nothing. Instead, she walked to the center of the kitchen, her voice steady. We're launching a new campaign this summer, the Summer Revival. One dish, one story, one soul behind it. The winning recipe will represent our company nationwide. She smiled faintly. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for truth. Patrick's mouth twitched. Truth can be dangerous in the kitchen, ma'am. Elena's eyes hardened slightly. Then perhaps it's time we learn to handle the heat. When the meeting ended, the team dispersed in uneasy silence. As Noah cleaned his station, Patrick brushed past him, whispering so low only he could hear. Muahene ansabidoche thimlin nua. The smell of burnt oil filled the air, sharp and heavy. Noah stared at the shimmering stove flames, their orange tongues licking the steel like they remembered his name. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the ash of guilt and loss, something old began to stir. A spark. The night settled over Los Angeles like a heavy, humid blanket. The city hummed in the distance, but inside Noah Larkin's small apartment, there was only the quiet buzz of an old refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. The space was modest, barely enough for a man and a child, but it was clean, meticulous, and smelled faintly of rosemary and lemon cleaner. A single light above the counter flickered, throwing amber shadows across the room where Ruby sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor. Ruby was 8, her hair a tangle of reddish curls that shimmered under the light. Her freckles danced across her nose like constellations, and her fingers, smudged with pencil from her sketchbook, were now tracing the edge of a small metal box. The box was dented, old, engraved with her mother's initials, ML, for Marin Larkin. Noah froze when he saw it. The air seemed to thicken. That box hadn't been opened in 3 years, not since the night of the fire. His throat tightened. "Ruby, where did you find that?" "In the top cabinet," she said softly, her voice carrying the hesitance of a child afraid she'd done something wrong. "I couldn't sleep, so I wanted to draw. Then I saw it. I thought it was Grandma's." Noah knelt beside her. The metal felt cool against his palms as he took it from her. Dust had settled into the creases of its engraved lid. He turned it over once, twice, before clicking it open. Inside were neatly stacked recipe cards, yellowed with time and the faint scent of dried basil. His heart ached at the handwriting, looped, elegant, familiar. Marin's hand. Ruby leaned closer. "What's that one?" Noah hesitated before sliding out a card. It read, "Ember Sauce, Revised Version." The ink was fresh compared to the others, written only weeks before she died. He could almost hear her laughter, see her standing at the stove again, stirring the pot while sunlight streamed in. The sauce that started it all, the dish that was supposed to make their careers, the same one Patrick Voss had accused him of mishandling, claiming it caused the gas ignition that burned down half the restaurant. Ruby tilted her head, eyes wide and solemn. "If Mom wrote it again, that means it wasn't a mistake, right? She wanted you to try again." Noah looked at his daughter, so small, so certain, and felt something shift inside him. For years, he'd buried every trace of that night. But now, staring at Marin's handwriting, he realized the truth wasn't gone. It was waiting. He rose to his feet, steadying his breath. "Go brush your teeth, sweetheart. I'll clean this up." Ruby nodded but lingered in the doorway, clutching her stuffed fox, its ears frayed from years of love. "Promise me you'll keep it, Daddy. It smells like Mom's summer kitchen." Noah smiled faintly. "I promise." When she disappeared down the hall, he stared at the recipe card again. Simple ingredients: heirloom tomatoes, chard, shallots, smoked paprika, basil, honey, and a note in Marin's hand. "Slow flame. Stir until memory returns." He traced her words with a trembling finger. The fire hadn't come from this sauce. He'd known that in his gut all along. Patrick had tampered with the gas line to frame him, but without proof, his word meant nothing. He gathered the ingredients quietly from the pantry: leftover tomatoes from work, a few sprigs of basil from the balcony, and a small jar of Marin's honey, one of the last she'd ever made. The kitchen seemed to come alive again, filled with echoes. The scrape of her spoon, the soft hum of her voice as she tasted and adjusted. Noah lit the burner. The blue flame hissed to life. He worked slowly, methodically, adding each ingredient like a prayer. The smell deepened, rich and nostalgic. The sauce glowed in the light like molten gold, thickening as if infused with memory itself. As he stirred, he thought of the fire 3 years ago, the chaos, the reporters, Patrick's voice shouting negligence. While Marin's lifeless body was carried from the smoke, he'd spent months drowning in silence, unable to taste anything without feeling the ash on his tongue. But tonight, for the first time, something inside him steadied. A soft knock startled him. The door creaked open. Caleb Reed stood in the doorway, half in shadow. His hair was mussed, shirt sleeves rolled, camera hanging around his neck. He'd been out photographing the city lights, but curiosity had drawn him up when he'd smelled the air in the hall. "You're cooking?" Noah blinked, caught off guard. I Couldn't sleep. Caleb stepped closer, the scent wrapping around him like warm smoke. Holy hell, that smells like summer burning. He leaned over the pot. What is this? Noah stirred once more, voice low. Something that shouldn't exist. Caleb studied him a moment, then gave a quiet nod. You know, he said, sometimes the best stories are the ones people try to bury. Noah almost smiled. You're a storyteller, not a cook. Maybe, Caleb said, eyes glinting. But I know a man who just found his beginning again. The two men stood in silence as the sauce simmered, its surface shimmering with heat and light. For a brief moment, the kitchen didn't feel small or haunted. It felt alive. When Noah finally turned off the stove, he lifted a spoon and tasted. It was bright, smoky, alive, just as he remembered. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, the memory of Marin didn't burn. It warmed. The night of the tasting began with a sky streaked in burnt orange, the last glow of daylight glinting off the Solara Tower's glass facade. Inside, the executive dining hall had been transformed into a cathedral of polished steel, crystal, and ambition. Every light shone like a spotlight, and every chef moved with the quiet intensity of a soldier before battle. At the far end of the long table sat Elena Drake, her posture as precise as her white linen suit. Her chestnut hair was tied back in a low knot, and the gold light caught on her thin glasses as she scanned the plated dishes before her. To anyone watching, she looked calm, composed even, but the slight tap of her finger against the table betrayed her restlessness. This was her first official tasting event as CEO, the one that would define her tenure. The board members whispered about her ambition. Some admired her discipline. Others called her heartless. She didn't care which version they believed, only that they respected her results. Patrick Voss loomed nearby, sweating slightly despite the air conditioning. His chef's coat strained against his broad frame, the top button left undone to ease the pressure. His beard was trimmed to perfection, but a faint scar ran along his jawline, a reminder from a knife fight in his youth that had left him both proud and paranoid. He had clawed his way to the top kitchen position at Solara through intimidation and control, not creativity. But tonight, as he watched the staff prepare, a flicker of unease passed through him. He'd received an anonymous submission for the contest. No name, no title. Just a note attached. A taste of truth. Now, that mysterious dish sat beside his own, gleaming under the warm light. A simple bowl of pasta with a dark red-gold sauce that shimmered as if alive. Its aroma, smoky and sweet, filled the air and clung to the senses. Patrick adjusted his collar and gestured toward the servers. Presenting the main entries, he said, his voice slick as butter. First, my dish. Golden citrus cod, seared in aged olive oil and finished with preserved lemon glaze, a fusion of light and salt meant to evoke summer's clarity. The presentation was flawless, white cod glistening under a drizzle of gold-tinted sauce, garnished with microgreens. The board members murmured their approval even before tasting. Patrick bowed slightly, satisfied. Then, one of the assistants, a petite woman named Lydia Tron, a junior chef barely in her 20s, brought forth the second plate. Lydia was small, with a quick, nervous smile and streaks of red hair escaping her bun. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the bowl before Elena. Entry, number 12, she stammered, submitted anonymously. Elena arched an eyebrow. Anonymous? We're allowing that? Patrick forced a laugh. Some of the staff wanted to encourage open creativity, ma'am. Nothing harmful, of course. But his voice had a tightness to it. Lydia stepped back, wringing her hands, while Patrick kept his eyes fixed on the bowl, like a man watching a snake uncoil. Elena lifted her fork, twirling a strand of the pasta. The sauce clung to it beautifully, gleaming like embers under glass. The moment it touched her tongue, the room seemed to hold its breath. The flavors unfolded slowly: smoked tomato, caramelized shallot, a hint of honey and char. But beyond taste, it felt alive, as if someone had poured memory into it. She was transported to a childhood kitchen, to her mother's laughter, to sunlight on copper pots. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the fork down. "This," she said softly, "is extraordinary." Silence rippled through the room. Patrick's smile faltered. "With respect, Ms. Drake," he said quickly, "I believe that sauce may be unauthorized. I recognize the recipe. It resembles the one tied to the old downtown fire incident." Murmurs erupted around the table. Lydia froze. Elena's eyes flicked to Patrick, then back to the dish. "Are you saying this sauce is dangerous?" Patrick straightened, voice oily and sure. "I'm saying it could be. The chef responsible for that disaster was reckless. People were injured, someone even died." Elena leaned back, her calm veneer hardening. "Then we'll verify the facts. I want a full review of that incident file tonight, and find out who submitted this entry." Patrick bowed slightly, concealing his satisfaction. "Of course." By midnight, the decision was made. Noah Larkin was to be suspended pending investigation. Word spread through the staff like wildfire. Some whispered sympathy, others fear. Noah didn't argue when security escorted him from the premises. He walked silently through the alley behind Solara, the city lights glinting off his weary face. He'd expected this reaction, maybe even deserved it. But deep inside, the taste of that sauce still burned, not as guilt this time, but as truth refusing to die. Inside the empty kitchen, Caleb Reed lingered long after the others had left. His camera bag rested on the counter, its zipper half open. He replayed the security feed on his tablet, curiosity gnawing at him. There, in grainy footage from 3 years ago, Patrick could be seen turning a valve near the stove moments before the blast. The timestamp, the angle, it all aligned. Caleb's pulse quickened. He'd never liked Patrick's smug confidence or his tendency to humiliate staff in front of others, but this was something darker, something criminal. As he copied the footage to a secure drive, Lydia appeared at the doorway, eyes red from crying. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "They're suspending Noah?" Caleb nodded, tucking the drive into his pocket. "For now, but the truth's about to catch fire again." Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the Pacific. The night wind carried the faint scent of burnt sugar and smoke through the streets, and in a small apartment across town, Ruby slept soundly while her father sat awake, staring at the flame of a single candle. It flickered, stubborn and alive, just like him. Morning light spilled into the Solara boardroom like liquid gold, catching the polished edges of the table and the brushed steel fixtures that gleamed with sterile perfection. Outside, the city shimmered beneath the heat of late summer. But inside, the air was cold, tension humming beneath every whispered conversation. The board members sat in stiff rows, their tailored suits and pearls reflecting years of corporate detachment. The aroma of coffee could not mask the electricity in the air. At the head of the table stood Elena Drake, her linen blazer replaced with a black fitted jacket. Her hair was tied high today, her face pale but resolute, every feature sharpened by determination. The night before had given her little sleep. She had reviewed the reports, the accusations, and the whispers, but none of them had prepared her for what Caleb Reed was about to reveal. Caleb entered quietly, carrying his tablet and a small drive. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, a sign he hadn't gone home either. The creative director's usually relaxed demeanor had hardened. His eyes, once soft with curiosity, now burned with purpose. He connected the tablet to the display screen, his voice low but steady. Ms. Drake, board members, this footage was archived from the Solara Downtown Kitchen. Date, 3 years ago. Time, 12 minutes before the explosion. The lights dimmed. On screen, grainy footage flickered to life. It showed a younger Patrick Voss moving through the prep area, adjusting gas valves, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. Then, the faint spark, the hiss, the camera shaking before the frame went black. Caleb paused the playback right before the blast, the frozen image of Patrick's face caught in the cold blue light of the monitors. Murmurs rippled across the room. Patrick sat rigidly in his chair, sweat gathering at his temple. His beard twitched as he tried to summon authority back into his voice. That footage is fabricated. Reed's tampered with it. I would never endanger my staff. Elena didn't look at him. And yet, every safety report was signed by you. Patrick's voice cracked. That's not proof. Caleb's gaze was unflinching. There's more. He tapped the screen. A second clip played, showing the aftermath. The emergency team hauling Marin Larkin's body from the debris while Patrick stood near the corner, talking to an insurance investigator. In the background, faint but audible, were his words, "At least it wasn't me in that kitchen." The room fell silent. Even the hum of the AC felt distant. Patrick's hands gripped the table's edge until his knuckles blanched. She was reckless. She used an unstable sauce, her husband's recipe. I was trying to protect this company. Elena finally looked at him, her tone icy. You framed an innocent man and let a family burn for your ambition. Patrick rose suddenly, his chair clattering backward. His voice was a snarl now. You think you know the truth, but you don't. You weren't there. You didn't see how unstable that sauce was. It could have killed us all. Elena stepped closer, her heels clicking with deliberate rhythm. And yet, somehow, it didn't kill you. He froze. Security entered quietly. 2 tall men in navy uniforms. One broad-shouldered, with dark skin and calm eyes. The other younger, freckled, trying not to meet Patrick's gaze. The older one, Officer Grant, had the kind of authority that didn't need shouting. Mr. Voss, he said evenly, you're required to come with us for questioning. Patrick tried to protest, but the strength had gone out of his voice. His protest faded to muttering as they led him away. The glass doors closed with a soft click. Elena exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of 3 years lift, not just from her company, but from the air itself. She turned toward Caleb. Call Noah Larkin. Tell him to come in. An hour later, Noah stood in the same boardroom, still wearing the same plain gray shirt from the night before. His hair was slightly damp from the morning rain. and his eyes carried that familiar guarded calm, the look of someone who had learned not to hope too loudly. Ruby was at school. Helen Moore had walked her there, humming old jazz tunes as she went. Elena gestured to the seat across from her. "Mr. Larkin," she began, "I owe you more than an apology." He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I just wanted the truth out." She smiled faintly. "You got that, and more. The board has decided to offer you the position of executive chef at Solara." Noah blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely." She slid a folder toward him. His reinstatement papers, signed and sealed. "And one more thing. We're launching a new community initiative, the Solara Hope Fund. It'll provide scholarships and childcare support for single-parent chefs. I want you to lead it." Noah's throat tightened. He nodded once, words caught somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. Elaine extended her hand. "Let's give people a reason to believe in second chances." Their handshake was brief but firm, fire meeting steel. That evening, the kitchen lights of Solara burned brighter than ever. The new menu launch drew journalists, critics, and loyal patrons. At the center of it all stood Noah, his apron crisp, his movements calm and deliberate. Above the main counter hung a framed inscription, "Marin's Ember Sauce, in memory of what endures." Caleb filmed quietly from the corner, capturing every plated dish, every smile that passed between staff. Lydia was there too, managing the service line with newfound confidence. Even Elena stayed past closing, watching from the balcony as the final customers lingered, their laughter echoing through the marble halls. Later that night, Noah returned home. Ruby sat at the table coloring a picture of a sun rising over a kitchen. When she saw him, she ran over, holding something small in her palm, a silver locket. "Mom's necklace," she whispered. "You should have it now." Noah knelt, clasping it in his hand. The metal was warm from her touch. "What did Mom always say about fire?" he asked softly. Ruby smiled. "She said it's not something to fear. It's what helps us see." He pulled her close. For the first time in 3 years, the air didn't smell like smoke. It smelled like summer, alive, forgiving, endless. And in the quiet glow of the kitchen lamp, the flame in Noah's heart burned steady once more. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive as thunder or lightning. They come quietly, like a spark in a tired kitchen. A child's voice whispering hope, or a recipe rediscovered in the ashes of loss. Noah's story reminds us that even when everything seems burned beyond repair, God can use the very fire that broke us to forge something new, stronger, purer, and filled with grace. Just as Noah found redemption in the kitchen where his world once fell apart. Perhaps you too are standing near your own ember, something small, glowing, waiting to be rekindled. Trust that God still works through broken things. Every scar, every delay, every loss might be preparing the soil for a miracle you haven't yet seen. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that faith still works wonders, that love can rise from the ashes, and that our scars are often where God's light shines the brightest. May the Lord bless every hand that cooks, every heart that forgives, and every soul that still believes in second chances. Tell us in the comments, what flame has God used in your life to light the way again? Like this story if it moved you. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of faith, love, and the quiet miracles God still performs every day. May His light guide you, and may your heart never lose its fire. Amen.